The Carolina Panthers released their first depth chart of the 2024 season on Monday afternoon. Let's take a look at it and see where players sit on the roster ahead of the preseason opener on Thursday in New England, right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show throughout the offseason. So either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions into me right now. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with the playoffs over, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And yes, I know the NFL preseason is opening up in earnest this weekend. Also, we have the Olympics still going on. Major League Baseball, oh, so close to college football. And this summer, by the way, y'all, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I am back once again here on Monday, the third show of the day on Monday. Now, the show reacting to the recent injury history here in Carolina the last couple of days. Recorded that on Sunday. We recorded the day 9 training camp observations earlier this afternoon. And this evening, looking over at my phone and seeing that the Panthers have dropped their first unofficial depth chart of the season, and felt like, well, you're going to talk to Alex Zeitlo tomorrow about what's going on in training camp. Probably now touch on this with Zeitlo and then preview the first preseason game up in New England on Thursday. You got to find some time, Julian, to talk about the depth chart. So here I am on Monday evening talking about it, and you're either watching or listening maybe on Monday or really whenever you have time to. So let's get into it. The Panthers releasing, they say on their website, the first depth chart of 2024. That's technically not true. They had depth charts back in January for week 17 and 18 of the 2023 regular season. Now, this is the first depth chart of the 2024 regular season, which has not begun, but I understand what they're saying, although technically not true. Either way, let's get into it. Look at the offense first, do a quick break, then look at the defense. Looking at the offense right now, the starters at quarterback, of course, Bryce Young. I guess let's break it down by position. Bryce Young is your starting quarterback, as we know. Andy Dalton's the number 2. Jack Plummer, number 3. Jake Luton, who was just brought in on Monday, he is the number 4 quarterback. The Panthers right now, we know for certain, as long as they stay healthy, and Andy's battling a calf injury, he was still out there on Monday, throwing a little bit later on in practice. He'll be fine, should be ready to go week 1. It's Bryce, it's Andy, and right now it's Jack. He is getting every opportunity to show that he is worthy of being that third quarterback and being the emergency quarterback for the Panthers once they get into the regular season. I do think it is notable that they brought in Jake Luton and not one of the other veterans that we talk about, like a Brian Hoyer, like a Ryan Tannehill, a Trevor Siemian. And I know none of these names are sexy and appealing. I just look at it as, if you're going to bring somebody in and you're going to force in a third quarterback, why not get somebody who's actually played in NFL games? And Jake Luton has done that. So he's probably not going to be the third guy, but Jack Plummer, he right now has the opportunity. And if he does not play well enough, he will not be that player. And the Panthers, of course, will look at the waiver wire once the preseason is over and see if there's anyone that they want to bring in. So right now, it's Bryce, it's Andy, it's Jack. And until Andy is healthy, it's Jake Luton as that fourth guy. Looking at the running back position, Chuba Hubbard on top of the depth chart, Miles Sanders, number 2, Raheem Blackshear, Mike Boone, Jaden Sheardon and Dylan Johnson, who they brought in recently from the University of Washington. As we know, Chuba going to be RB1, and knowing about the news that came out this weekend from Dave Canales that Jonathan Brooks, their second-round running back out of Texas, who tore his ACL last November, he's not going to be ready until maybe week 3, week 4. Seems like he's a pretty good candidate to start off on PUP, the physically unable to perform list before the season begins. Could see that. I don't really see him making that big of an impact right now as things presently sit, knowing that he's not going to get game reps in the preseason. He's not getting reps right now in training camp. Really hard to expect somebody coming off of that kind of injury, not getting any live reps during training camp in the preseason to come in during the regular season and to unseat someone like Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. And having a conversation with somebody at camp on Monday, they made a pretty good point to me. This organization knows that this is it for Chuba as far as his rookie deal, and that they have an out Miles Sanders contract after this season. There's two guys that they can run into the ground. And as I have always told y'all, use them, abuse them, then lose them. Federal minimum wage, no overtime, no holiday pay, none of that when it comes to running backs. That's what Chuba and that's what Miles Sanders, even though Miles getting paid a lot of money, can be to the Panthers this year. So those two guys should be the 1-2 punch. Chuba's the top guy, Miles second guy, and Dave Canales said he wants to be stubborn about running the football. The offensive linemen are excited about it, and at camp, they're dedicated to the run. So those two guys are going to get a lot of work this season, whether Jonathan Sanders or Brooks is ready to go or not. So Chuba and Miles, those are your top running backs. Raheem Blackshear, your third guy. He's going to be a kick returner, so he's going to be on the roster. Then Mike Boone, heard a lot recently about how this team really likes him. Think he probably factors in as more of a guy who would be on the practice squad, but knowing right now that Jonathan Brooks not going to be ready to go week 1 and a really good candidate to start off on PUP, maybe Mike Boone makes the initial 53-man roster, but also, oh man, I have my roster on me. I'm pretty sure he is a 7-year vet or something like that. So the whole vested veteran thing where he's he's 7-year vet. So the whole vested veteran thing where if you've been in the league 4 years, your contract is guaranteed. If you're on the roster week 1, expect him to be cut, then brought back likely after week 1, unless somebody else picks him up. But right now has an opportunity to certainly stick around here in Carolina. Wide receiver. A vitally important position, was the worst wide receiver room in the NFL last year. Adam Thielen, he's up there back in the slot. Jonathan Mingo, he right now is wide receiver 3 and, of course, wide receiver 1. And the top target is Deontay Johnson. Those are the 3 starters. And looking at everything that I've seen at training camp so far, that checks out. It scans that those have been the top 3 guys at wide receiver. Behind them, looking at behind Deontay Johnson, you got Terrace Marshall as a number 2. Is a second-string wide receiver, Amir Smith-Marset as a second-string wide receiver, and Xavier Legette, who was able to really get a good diagnosis with the MRI coming back negative when looking at his foot. So no break there. He is day-to-day, going to miss the preseason opener on Thursday in New England. Those are the other guys. And then looking at Mike Strawn as well, who was a Frank Reich guy. He's still around. David Moore, Devin Tompkins, who's brought in as more of a returner. Jalen Coker, somebody who a lot of fans have been wondering if he was going to be a guy who could make the roster, as there's opportunity there. Looking at it, if they're only going to keep 5 wide receivers, maybe not even 5. Let's see. Deontay Johnson's on the roster. Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo, Xavier Legette. Those are 4 guys that are guaranteed to be on the roster. And then after that, Amir Smith-Marset, I think, is going to make it because of special teams. So that's 5. If they keep 6, right now, I would say Terrace Marshall Jr., but don't look past David Moore. This staff likes him. The whole thing, though, is he's a vested veteran, so his contract will be guaranteed if he's on the roster week 1. That may be a guy that they decide to release. Devin Tompkins also could make the roster based on special teams, but looking at it right now, if they're keeping 5, it's clearly Johnson, it's Thielen, it's Mingo, it's Legette, and then it's Amir Smith-Marset. If they're keeping 6, I feel like Terrace Marshall Jr. is in prime position to be that 6th guy. So we'll see how that works out. Looking at the offensive line, we'll start with tight ends before we get to the rest of the offensive line, we'll get to the offensive line, period. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, those are listed as your top 2 tight ends right now in Carolina. Tremble has only practiced one time during training camp as he's dealt with a hamstring. He should be back at some point next week. Will he be out there for joint practice with the Jets? That's still to be determined. I would not expect him to play in a preseason game next weekend against New York. Then looking at Ian Thomas, he's got a calf issue. He's got to figure out. It's going to be something that's going to test him up until week 1. That's what Dave Canales said on Sunday after practice. So we'll see how that works out. He was out there on Monday just walking around. So that at least is a good sign that he got some treatment, but he was still able to be out there, where did not see Shaq, did not see Xavier Legette, did not see Cam Gill either when looking at all of that. Jatavion Sanders is a backup. Jordan Matthews is a backup. Felipe Franks, Jacob Hollister, Jesper Horsted. So Sanders, Matthews, Franks, Hollister, and Horsted are the only healthy tight ends right now. Stephon Sullivan currently on IR. If I'm looking at it right now, the 4 guys, barring that Thomas is going to be good to go week 1, who would make the roster at the tight end spot, because I think they'll keep 4, are Ian Thomas, Tommy Tremble, Jatavion Sanders, and then Jordan Matthews. Not somebody who I thought had a chance at all. Looked at him as more as a Frank Reich guy, somebody who used to play wide receiver in this league, was pretty successful early on coming out of Vanderbilt, especially his time in Philadelphia, transitioned to tight end. He was playing a lot even before Thomas went down. Trimble, again, has not really been around. He's impressed, and based off of necessity, the fact that he's been here, he's probably going to be on the roster. Now, I wouldn't count out Jacob Hollister because of his relationship with the staff to have that opportunity. If Thomas is not ready to go, Hollister would make sense as that 4th guy instead, and maybe he takes over ahead of Jordan Matthews, but Matthews has garnered praise from Panthers head coach Dave Canales. Looking at the offensive line, we talked about these guys a lot. Ike Ekwonu starting at left, Austin Corbett starting at center. At left guard, you have Damian Lewis. At right guard, Robert Hunt. Right tackle, Taylor Moton. Those are your 5 starters. Then behind them, right now on the depth chart, they have Ricky Lee as second string left tackle, Chandler Zavala as a second string left guard, Cade Mays as a backup center, Brady Christensen there at right guard, and Badera Traore at right tackle, because Josh Nijman, their free agent signing from Green Bay, who's expected to be their swing tackle, he is still dealing with a surgery he had to help him out with a recovering broken leg. He's been out there, so been working his way back out, but he's still not ready. And there's a possibility that he may be someone who starts off the season on PUP, meaning he would have to miss the first 4 weeks of the year. Jeremy Crawford is the 3rd string left tackle. Nash Jensen, 3rd string left guard. Brady Christensen is the 3rd string center, along with being the 2nd string right guard. JD Lorenzo, 3rd string right guard. Andrew Ram, still don't know his name. I'm sorry to him and his family, and to you, the listener and viewer, for not knowing how to pronounce it. He is the 4th string center, the guy out of Oklahoma. And I talked about this, I believe, earlier today on my observation of day 9 of training camp. Looks like they're going to probably keep 9. We know the starting 5. After that, Ricky Lee appears. Well, it would be Christensen as their 6th guy, Mays as their 7th guy as their backup center, and they like Cade Mays there more than Brady Christensen. And in past years, we look at these unofficial depth charts, and you can't take it too seriously. But right now, like looking at it, this is what I've been watching at camp. It checks out to what we've been seeing and what I think we'll see also come Thursday night, dependent upon whether Bryce Young and the ones play. We'll see what Dave Canales decides to do. He said he was wrestling with that decision when speaking to us on Monday after practice. So still, Christensen as their 6th guy. He would be the backup at right guard, the backup at left guard, the backup at tackle, and then it's Cade Mays at center. Then you would have, if Josh Diamond's available, he would be the other guy. That would be 8. And then the final player would come down to Zavala and Ricky Lee. And from my understanding, they would take Ricky Lee. Now, if Josh Nijman starts off on PUP, it would then be Zavala who makes the roster as the 9th man, with Ricky Lee already up there as the 8th man. Then get Cade Mays and Brady Christensen as the 6th and 7th guys, respectively, here on the roster. So that is the unofficial depth chart for the Panthers offense through the first 2 weeks of training camp. We'll take a look at the defense here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip a leg day or therapy day when your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more. It's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Taking a look at the defensive side of things when looking at the Panthers' first depth chart of 2024, their unofficial depth chart. Looking first at the defensive line, your starters on the defensive line: Derek Brown, Shai Tuttle, A'Shawn Robinson. No surprise there. Have seen that consistently. Have also seen TJ Smith out of Arkansas, who is consistently rotated with A'Shawn Robinson and Shai Tuttle. There with the first stringers. Those are your top four. It looks like Nick Thurman, LeBron Ray would also be second string guys behind Tuttle and Robinson. Third string, Jaden Crumedy. Got Ulumu, Ale, and Junior Aho, who, when listed on the roster, he's listed as being a practice squad player. So don't know what that means as far as in the preseason. I know what it means in a regular season. As far as the preseason, he's listed as a practice squad guy. So I have to get more clarity on the situation there, and I have to ask somebody about that with the Panther staff, or maybe just one of my friends out there here in the local media. But Derek Brown's on the roster. Shai Tuttle, A'Shawn Robinson. It feels like TJ Smith is, considering how much he's out there, and he's rotating with the ones a ton. Now we'll see how he performs in the preseason. That matters when evaluating these players, and he should get a decent amount of snaps. Nick Thurman looked really good at points of time, especially late last season. LeBron Ray as well. Did not see him out there on Monday, by the way. Having a conversation with somebody on the sideline on Monday, it does not look good so far for the 6th-round pick out of Mississippi State, Jaden Crumedy. And the fact that TJ Smith is getting a lot of run with the first team, Thurman, Ray are back here again. And this is the same defensive coaching staff that we had last year here in Carolina. Going to make it tough for Crumedy. So if they're keeping 6, it's Brown, it's Tuttle, it's Robinson, it's Smith, it's Thurman, it's Ray. And if they're only keeping 5, I feel like it's going to come down to Nick Thurman and LeBron Ray from looking at things so far in training camp. We'll see how those guys perform, of course, in the preseason. Let's go over to edge rusher, outside linebacker, kind of on the defensive line as well. The starting edge rushers currently, it looks like it's Jadeveon Clowney. No surprise there. And DJ Johnson, 3rd-round pick last year out of Oregon, somebody who Ajiro Avero, the DC here in Carolina, really liked and has garner praise as well so far early on in training camp. Excited to see what he's able to do in the game, though. And I don't think he's going to be somebody that gets to rest. Clowney, don't really think he's going to play a lot if he plays at all, and I don't really need to see him playing. But as far as DJ Johnson goes, yeah, get that guy some reps. Let's see him be ready to go. He is your other starter. Kayvon Chaisson, being out there, he's also had a lot of opportunities. Now, Johnson, in the days that I was not there in a recent week, appeared to have taken over that role. And looking at it actually on Monday, today, earlier this morning, it was Chaisson who was out there with the ones more than Johnson, but they're going to be rotating those guys. So those 3 are going to be your top 3 as things currently stand. Aku Leota from Auburn, UDFA last year, he's somebody that helped out in special teams and that this staff liked last season. Again, same defensive coaching staff. He currently is a backup. We got let's see, that's a linebacker. We got Kenny Dyson, Louis Lane, Derek McClendon, and Cam Gale as the 3rd and 4th stringers. Cam Gale, as I mentioned earlier on today, Monday, on the observation show, he is somebody who suffered an injury, and he may be done for a while, maybe permanently here in Carolina, at least for this season. I still feel like they're going to have to add somebody. DJ Wonnum, waiting to see what his situation is, whether he's going to be ready to go for week 1 or if he's going to start off on PUP. Still not much of clarity when it comes to that situation at all. So Clowney, Johnson, Chaisson for sure. Those 3 are going to stick around. Maury Barno, another guy who is out there, but probably not close coming back with the torn ACL suffered week 16 last year. That's in December against the Packers. We'll look for him to start off the year on PUP, and maybe DJ Wonnum's right there with him. But Clowney, Johnson, Chaisson, those 3 are absolutely in the roster. Leota probably in a good spot to make it right now. Just looking at how things are playing out. Cam Gill, another guy who's going to make it, I thought, on special teams, have projected that. He appears to be done in Carolina. Looking at the inside linebacker group, Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell, those are your two starters. No surprise there. Shaq dealing with a hamstring. Again, much like some of the other situations, not much clarity as far as when he's going to be ready to go. More of a week-to-week than a day-to-day thing. The hope is he'll be ready to go week one. That may not be the case. If that's not the case, Claude Cherilus and Trevin Wallace are the two backups there at inside linebacker. Trevin Wallace would be the starter. He and Cherilus, as we saw on Monday, at least I observed on Monday, he was out there. That pairing was out there as starting linebacker duo with Thompson nowhere to be found as he's rehabbing, and Josie Jewell getting a vet day like many guys did get on Monday. I would think it would be Jewell and then Wallace, who this staff apparently really has liked how he's come in and performed so far. Maybe not the best instincts at linebacker, but he runs hard, plays hard, and he's somebody that will maybe one day wear the green dot here in Carolina. Chandler Wooten, Tay Davis, Michael Barrett, Jackson Mitchell, those are your third and fourth stringers at linebacker. Wooten, I would think he would make the roster because of special teams. Same thing with Claude and Cherilus. Tay Davis would be right there with him in that situation. And think about this, guys, as far as just looking at these back of the roster guys, people got to play special teams. Sam Franklin, he is out for the foreseeable future with a broken foot. Also, talking about Cam Gill, another special teams player who played special teams premium, was a premier player special teams wise in Tampa the last couple of years, relationship with Dave Canales, some of the guys on the staff. He currently is going to be out. That's two spots that have opened up for some of these guys at inside linebacker who I talked about when doing roster breakdowns last month. They're going to have to really battle to make the roster special teams wise. Cherilus, Davis, and Wooten all feel like they're in a good spot to make it because of the need and the injuries that have occurred there when it comes to the Panthers special teams unit. Looking at the secondary, we're starting out at corner. J.C. Horn, Dane Jackson, of course, can be starting corners here right now. Troy Hill would be the starting nickel behind them. Lamar Jackson behind J.C. Horn, DiCaprio Boodle behind Dane Jackson, Chaw Smith-Wade behind Troy Hill. No surprise there with Smith-Wade. He is the guy who they're going to project to be their starter next year, and that's the common theme when looking at the draft. They drafted Jonathan Brooks apparently to be the starting running back next year, as they knew he was not going to be ready to go at least at the beginning of the season, and then they knew they had two running backs in Hubbard and in Sanders that they can run into the ground and then get the guy who they really feel like fits them better and is going to be a long-term player here, up to speed and healthy for 2025. They also brought in JT Sanders for the future. Trimble last year. Thomas could be his last year as far as their contracts go and their time here in Carolina. Tavion Sanders, give him an opportunity to be the starter next year. That's one of those moves as well. Trevin Wallace, that's a move for the future, as this is Shaq Thompson's final year of his contract. He says he has 5 more years left. Will those 5 years be in Carolina? I think it's unlikely, just looking at his current injury status and last year as well, and his age. So we'll see how that plays out. Chaw Smith-Wade, much like that, he's somebody they brought in with the expectation that next year he would fill in for Troy Hill, who's going to turn 32 later on this month. So he would be on the roster. Troy would be on the roster. Dane Jackson, J.C. Horn. Those would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Boodle, he's in a good spot. He's consistently been, he's been the guy that they filled in to put in there as the other outside corner when JC has gotten a break. It's been DiCaprio, and Lamar Jackson has really stayed out recently. And Dave Canales came out and said on Monday when speaking to us after practice that that's a guy he wants to see it translate from the practice field in the preseason. If he does that, he's on the roster. Deshaun Jameson, not looking good for him as he's consistently had some issues covering guys, and he is a third string corner right now. Willie Drew as well, and then Anthony Brown. It looks like you got to look at the secondary as 10 guys that you're going to keep with the roster. So you got JC, Lamar, JC, Dane, Troy, Chaw, DiCaprio, Lamar. That's 6. And then at safety, looking at it right now with Sam Franklin Jr., again, injured, Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller. Those are the 2 starters. Nick Scott, he's going to be a third guy. I thought that maybe with the vested veteran situation that they would get rid of him. No, he's their third guy. He's also stepped up on special teams to take over some of the roles that Sam Franklin Jr. was supposed to play. Then Alex Cook, they love him. Signed him off of I believe the Giants practice squad last year. He came in and started a couple games over a guy like Jamie Robinson, who currently is listed as a third string nickel corner here in Carolina. I think he's on the roster. So if you're looking at 6 in the secondary, it's J.C. Horn, it's Dane Jackson, Xavier Woods, it's Jordan Fuller, it's Troy Hill. That's your starting 5. Then it's Josh Smith-Wade, it's DiCaprio Boodle, it's Nick Scott, it's Alex Cook, and Lamar Jackson would be that guy as long as he performs. Deshaun Jameson, Jamie Robinson, 2 guys are going to really have to fight to get there. Having a hard time seeing it for the 5th-round pick last year out of Florida State and for the UDFA who played here last year out of the University of Texas. So that's the defense and where it currently stands. Another note, Michael Barrett, 7th-round pick out of Michigan, was told that it's going to be really tough for him to make the roster. Same thing with Jaden Crumedy. Like, those are 2 guys, 6- and 7th-round picks. And this is why I don't really get too caught up in 6- and 7th-round picks. A lot of times, they're not going to make the roster, and they're not guaranteed a spot. Crumedy, Barrett, not looking good for them right now. So maybe they make the practice squad, but looking at that situation, how the roster is and how the depth chart sits, and this is pretty accurate to what I've seen in the injury situation right now in Carolina, those 2 guys would be the odd men out as far as the draft class here this season. Is that a good? Is that a bad thing? If you're upset about 6- or 7th-round picks not panning out, I don't really know what to tell you. If Josh Smith-Wade turns out to be a good player as a 5th-round pick, same thing with Shavion Sanders, a 4th-round pick, be happy about that because that certainly is an improvement as the day 3 picks have really not played well here in Carolina in recent history. And you can maybe even say in team history. Finally, looking at special teams, the top kick returner is Raheem Blackshear. Then you have punt returner Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Looking at kick return, they're going to have one guy returning. Then they're going to have someone basically as an up back who's also there in the 20, from the 20-yard line to the end zone, which is called the landing zone with the new rules. I missed the preseason game on Thursday, the Hall of Fame game, so I still have not seen it. I was honestly actually sitting at a bar after I got off the golf course, was sitting there, and I was trying to see it, kept looking up. I was like, oh, damn, missed it again. So it just kept happening to me. I will get to see it on Thursday for the first time. Excited to see. With how the Panthers have run it so far during practice, is they've had one guy back there to return, another guy back there with him, as they're only allowed 2 in the landing zone. That other person is utilized as a up back who is meant to block. So Raheem Blackshear, he'll be the top kick returner. Ihmir Smith-Marsette, Devin Tompkins, and then David Moore. Really not Xavier Legette at all, making an impact as far as that goes. And then looking at punt return, exactly the same as far as the depth chart, except you're flipping Ihmir Smith-Marsette with Raheem Blackshear. Ihmir would be the top punt returner, then Raheem, then Devin Tompkins, then David Moore. And that's the thing. Like Blackshear, Marsette, Smith-Marsette, they're both here to make the roster as returners, and that will be the case, I believe. Long snapper, J.J. Jansen, of course, Johnny Hecker, starting punter, and in the kicker competition, the kick traversy, Eddie Pinheiro ahead of Harrison Mevis. No surprises. And I am a little surprised that I'm looking at this unofficial depth chart, and it feels pretty official based off all the things that I have observed at training camp and everything that has also been written in the days that I've not been there. We will see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks as the Panthers have their preseason opener on Thursday evening up in New England. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to give me your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me and on Twitter to get those questions in. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I will talk to y'all on Wednesday, where again, Alex Seitlow, the Charlotte Observer, will be here on the show.